Welcome back, I'm Tippity. You are here to improve your SAT score by 100 points in just 24 hours. Today we are looking at the math section, specifically section 3, math with no calculator. This section moves really fast. You have 25 minutes for 20 questions. That's just a minute and 15 seconds per question. So today we're going to mostly do a demonstration. I'm going to go work through the first 10 questions of this section. I think it should be a pretty quick video. Let's jump into it. All right, so here we have question 1. Question 1 says, if x minus 1 divided by 3 equals k and k equals 3, what is the value of x? All right, so we have x minus 1 divided by 3 equals k, but k is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and replace k with 3, and now we need to isolate the x. So what do we have here? We have a minus 1 and a divide by 3. In this scenario, you want to multiply by 3 first. So we can cancel this 3 on the bottom here. We get x minus 1 equals 9. We need to get rid of this minus 1, so we add plus 1 to both sides to get x equals 10. The correct answer for number 1 is choice D. Okay, not bad, not bad. Yeah, if you have some trouble with algebra, you probably want to grab your algebra textbook, do some review, maybe find some practice on Khan Academy or something like that, because this type of basic algebra and systems of equations especially, it makes up a solid 40% of the math section, I'd say. Okay, number 2. So here we have I equals root negative 1. What is the sum of 7 plus 3i plus negative 8 plus 9i? So in the SAT, I like to tell my students that you can treat I just like you treat x. The only difference, especially in the SAT, is that if you have an I squared will equal negative 1, because the root and the squares cancel out, right? Alright, so here we treat it just like an x. We combine like factors, so we have two regular numbers, 7 and negative 8, that's equal to negative 1. And then we have two I numbers, 3i and 9i, that becomes 12i. The answer is A, all right? And make sure you're reading the questions carefully. There's a plus here, so this is not a FOIL, we're just adding them together. Number 3. Okay, on Saturday afternoon, Armand sent M text messages each hour for 5 hours, and Tyrone sent P text messages each hour for 4 hours. Which of the following represents the total number of messages sent by Armand and Tyrone on Saturday afternoon? Text messages, huh? Look at the SAT writers trying to be relatable. Really, they should have said like a Snapchat. DMs. So 5 hours, M text messages. So if Armand sent M text messages each hour for 5 hours, pretty straightforward, you multiply 5 times M. So if for example, if I send 2 text messages per hour for 3 hours, then I sent 6 text messages total, right? 3 times 6. So it's the same idea. We don't know exactly how many Armand sent, but we're going to use a variable to represent whatever number that could be. And then we're going to add the number of text messages Tyrone sent, right? If Armand sends so many text messages, Tyrone sends another amount. To figure out how many they sent together, you add up those two numbers. That's how addition works. And how many did Tyrone send? P times 4, or 4p. Okay, that's choice C. All right, let's move on. Oh, here we have a word problem. Lengthy. Kathy is a repair technician for a phone company. Each week she receives a batch of phones that need repairs. The number of phones that she has left to fix at the end of each day can be estimated with the equation P equals 108 minus 23D, where P is the number of phones left and D is the number of days she has worked that week. What is the meaning of the value 108 in this equation? All right. I'll actually give you guys a tip. So in the SAT, if you see the word rate, especially in these types of like long word problems, rate almost always means slope, and initial cost, or, it's not always cost. Sometimes, in this case, it's phones, whatever, boats, land. It's usually money though. This time it's phones. This is the y-intercept. And so there's a lot of word equations based on the slope-intercept form. So hopefully you remember that. Y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. And in the SAT word problems, almost always, rate refers to slope, m, the number that's being multiplied to x. And initial cost, or initial whatever, refers to the y-intercept, which is b. So in this case, you have to recognize that 108 is the p-intercept. So instead of y, we're using p. And then, so it's the intercept because the number being multiplied to the variable is the slope. So the order is a little different. So in school, you probably learned mx plus b. Here they've given us b minus, or b plus m times d, where m is negative 23. So what did I just say? B, or the y-intercept, is the initial cost. So 108 is the initial number of phones in this particular problem. Kathy starts each week with 108 phones to fix. All right, let's move on to question 5. All right, this one might look intimidating. Don't be intimidated. So like the College Board is kind of like pros at knowing exactly how to get high school students to miss math questions. So this one, again, like before, you have to recognize that there's a minus here. We're not going to multiply these expressions together. We're just finding the difference. So again, the key here will be to find like factors. So we have x squared y minus 3y squared plus 5xy squared. And then we have minus negative x squared y plus 3xy squared minus 3y squared. Okay, so first we should start by distributing the negative throughout the parentheses. So that only applies to the second set. So here we get negative is a plus, x squared y plus minus is a minus, 3xy squared minus again is a plus 3y squared, okay? And then we have x squared y minus 3y squared plus 5xy squared. Okay, combine like terms. We have x squared y, we have another x squared y. That's 2x squared y. We have a minus 3y squared and a plus 3y squared. That's 0. Plus 3 minus 3 is 0. And then we have a 5xy squared minus 3xy squared. 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay. Let's see. Number 6. H equals 3a plus 28.6. A pediatrician uses the model above to estimate the height h of a boy in inches in terms of the boy's age a in years between the ages 2 and 5. Based on the model, what is the estimated increase in inches of a boy's height each year? Okay, so this is actually very similar to question 4. So here they're asking for the estimated increase in inches per year. That's a fancy way of saying slope. So the correct answer here is A. Yeah, because 3 times A, 3 is being multiplied to the variable, 3 is the slope, 3 inches is exactly, or the estimated height increase per year. So that's all nice, but maybe as a high school student, you're not exactly confident enough to just pick A and move on. I definitely was not as a high schooler. So I would have done, probably, like as a teenager, I probably would have done something more like this. So I would have figured out what the height would be when you're 3, according to this equation. So that's 9. 9 plus 28 would be 37.6. And then how about when you're 4? So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus this would be 40.6. So here you can see the difference between 37.6 and 40.6 is exactly 3. And then if you're still not feeling super comfortable, you can also try like age 2 or age 5. All right, let's move on to 7. All right, so 7, it looks really, really scary, right? A lot of kids kind of freeze up when they see this problem for the first time. It's okay. We'll figure it out together. I'm here to help you. Okay, so this one says the formula above gives the monthly payment M needed to pay off a loan of P dollars and R percent annual interest over N months. Which of the following gives P in terms of M, R, and N? This final sentence is really important. Which of the following gives P in terms of M, R, and N? That's a fancy SAT way of saying solve for P. Hopefully you can tell by the answer choices, right? Okay, so how do you do this one? There's so many letters and numbers. What do I do? Okay, don't freak out. I think that's key. That's step number 1. When you're in the SAT, you shouldn't be freaking out. And I have a lot of students saying, but how do I do that? I get so anxious. Honestly, if you get anxious about your tests, the best way to handle your anxiety is just to practice until you feel confident, right? And then, we can do that together. Okay, so here you have to realize in this problem we have P being multiplied to this fancy fraction, and that equals M. So don't be intimidated by the fancy fraction. Let's actually try this one. So this time I've simplified the fraction quite a bit. Instead of these parentheses and R's and N's, I've just called the top A and I've called the bottom B. So hopefully you know how to solve for this one. This one you would multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So A divided by B times B divided by A cancels out. That just leaves us with P equals B over A times M. And we've isolated P. So hopefully you've recognized that the only thing that changes is that the fraction flips and it goes to the other side of the equation. And it doesn't matter how complicated the fraction is, that rule will always be true if we just have a fraction being multiplied to P. So let's see, answer is B. Yeah, do you see how we have this big fraction? We flipped it, so the bottom part goes on the top part goes on the bottom, and then we multiply it to M, isolate P. That's all there is to it. Answer is B. Number 8, almost done. Just a couple problems left to go. So if A divided by B equals 2, what is the value of 4B divided by A? A couple different ways to solve this one. So I'll show you one of the ways my students showed me. I really like this way. So if A divided by B is 2, B divided by A must be 1/2. That means 4 times B divided by A is equal to 4 times 1/2. 4 times 1/2 is 2. Not bad, not bad. Yeah, you can also use like substitution. There's always a bunch of ways to solve any given math problem. You should just, the important part is, don't make a mistake. It's like pretty good advice for life in general. Just make sure you don't mess up. All right, so here we have a system of equations. We have 2 equations. We need to solve for x and y. Where do they intersect? How do I want to solve this one? So in general, I'll give you guys a tip. So in the SAT, they really prefer elimination over substitution, which is interesting. I really like substitution, but in the SAT, I find myself often defaulting to elimination just because the problems are made so that it's much easier if you use elimination. So I wrote down the first equation. I'm going to rearrange the second equation a little bit and also multiply everything by -2. So I'm going to put down the x first. Negative x times -2 is positive 2x. 2y times negative 2 is negative 4y. Negative 19 times negative 2 is positive 38. Okay. So why did I do that? It's so that if I add these two equations together, the 4y and the minus 4y will cancel out. I can eliminate the y variable by combining these two equations after multiplying the bottom equation by negative 2. Okay, so these cancel. This is 0. Equation sign stays. 3x plus 2x is 5x. 38 minus 23, that's 15. 5x equals 15. Divide by 5 on both sides to get x equals 3. Yeah, 3 times 5 is 15. And then we use one of the other equations to isolate y. So we would do 2y minus 3 equals negative 19. 2y equals negative 1, 2, 3, 16. Y equals negative 8. And then in general, it's a good idea to check your answers. So that answer is one of the choices. And then let's double check. So we just kind of solved that one using the bottom problem. So 2 times negative 8 would be negative 16. Minus 3 is negative 19. Definitely works. And then we would have 3 times 3 is 9. Plus negative 8 times 4, that's negative 32. Negative 32 plus 9, that's negative 23. B works. Last problem, number 10. Okay. So this one, I'll start by showing you how the College Board solves it, but then I'll also show you how I solve it as well. So we have this function. Hopefully you guys know how functions work. If you don't, g of x, it just is like the same thing as y. So we have g of x equals a times x squared plus 24. The question reads, for the function g defined above, a is a constant and g of 4 is 8. That means if you plug in 4 for x, the g or the y is equal to 8. So there's a point on the graph at 4, 8. What is the value of g of negative 4? So the College Board has like a very smart or quick or intuitive way of solving this one. So they want you to recognize here that ax squared plus 24 is a parabola, and specifically it's a parabola that kind of mirrors perfectly across the y-axis. Actually, I think this one heads down, if I remember correctly. I mean, it must, right? Because we have a point here at 0, 24, and then we also have a point here at 4, 8. And they want you to recognize that, so since it's symmetric, g of negative 4 will also be 8. It's a parabola. There's no like b term, just ax squared plus 24. That means we have a vertex at 0, 24, and it'll be symmetric on both sides of the y-axis. That means if we have 4, 8, we must also have negative 4, 8. Yeah, but I probably wouldn't think of it that way. I mean, if I'm trying to work quickly, I might not think of that solution immediately. So how I would solve it is just plug in 4 and then solve for a. And this is going to be equal to 8, right? They've told us that. So this would become 16a plus 24 equals 8. Subtract 24 on both sides. 16a equals negative 16. Divide by 16 on both sides to get a equals negative 1. Okay, so I got a equals negative 1. That means g of x equals negative x squared plus 24. Go ahead and plug in negative 4 for x. Well, negative 4 squared is still 16. So 4 squared is 16, negative 4 squared is also 16. That's why it's symmetric, right? So 16 negative, negative 16 plus 24, that is also 8. All right. So, yeah, those are kind of the easiest questions in the math portion of the SAT. You definitely want to be able to hit these, hopefully get all the answers correct, and be able to do this in under 12 minutes because you still have 10 of the harder questions left over, right? But I think for now, that'll be it for today. I think in the next video, we're going to take a look at some of the reading section. We're going to do a literature passage. Should be fun. I hope you guys are taking notes. Definitely work on your algebra, and I will see you in the next video.